Right. The next path to publication that we looked at was indie or self-publishing. As I say, I rather like the term indie for independent because effectively the author is now becoming the publisher. You are an independent publisher all of your own. So as an author, you're no longer just the writer. You can afford to be just the writer when you're with a traditional publishing. Though nowadays, publishers are basically expecting the author to contribute and to help out with the marketing and promotion. So you will still be expected to do marketing and promotion. You can't just write the book and then disappear and just hope for the best. They are expecting authors to be far more involved in the process than they used to be. But when you go into indie publishing, you are now responsible for everything. That means paying the cover designer, briefing the cover designer, hiring an editor, making sure it's an editor who is the right fit for you, because not all editors are equal. You need to make sure you get an editor who specializes in your genre. Again, do they know the genre expectations? Do they know the formulae for that genre? In other words, which really boils down to reader expectations. What does a crime reader expect? Well, they're going to expect the crime to be solved. They're going to expect a certain amount of twists and turns. They're going to expect a certain pacing. And you need to have an editor who knows those conventions of the genre. You then need to pay all of that upfront out of your own pocket. So the author here carries all the financial risk. But it's not all doom and gloom, because what are the pros and cons of going into indie publishing? Well, the first thing is more flexibility and control for the author. I remember years ago when I was with a small digital first imprint, I had a book set in the 1920s and they put an Edwardian woman in a big Edwardian hat on the cover. The book was set in Italy on the Amalfi Coast, and I think they put the completely wrong skyline on it. I was lucky. Most publishers will not redesign a cover for the author. If you don't like it, tough. You just have to live with it. I was lucky that I could go to them and say, this is the wrong time period, wrong clothing. So they redesigned it for me. And I got very lucky with the second cover that they did. But they could have, if they were within their rights, to turn around and say, tough luck, that's the cover we've designed for you. What I have discovered is that generally, if you're with a reputable publisher, they know their market. They know what cover designs work for their market and what sells. So, for example, my very first book that came out with HarperCollins was called Waking Up in Vegas. And the original cover, which has now subsequently changed, has had a guy and a girl on the front cover, their backs, and they were both in bridal clothing and looking at a Las Vegas sign. Because as you can imagine, Waking Up in Vegas was all about a sort of runaway marriage. So that cover, both the characters they put on the front cover were dark-haired. In my book, they were both blonde. In my book, they actually never get married in full wedding regalia because it's a Las Vegas chapel wedding and they're pretty much married in jeans. So the cover did not represent the book, but the publisher knew what was going to appeal to readers of that genre. They knew what was going to be eye-catching, what fitted with the genre, what the genre expectations were, what would tell readers, this is what you can expect from this book. And I must say they did a good job and it sold. And I love the fact that over time, they have actually been flexible enough and willing enough. And this is why I particularly love my publisher. But as I say, they're a digital first. So they're a lot more flexible and a lot more adaptable than most. And my publisher, about a year or so back, 2 years back, I can't remember now, decided to rebrand and recover all the novels because fads within publishing have changed and covers generally have changed and they wanted to keep it up to date. Now, as an indie author, you can do that at any time. If the cover's not working for you, change it. If you can afford to. If you go in with a cheap pre-made cover to start with, for example, you can get cheap pre-made covers. You can just Google pre-made cover designers. There are a lot of pre-made covers that go anywhere from $20 up to $200 or more dollars. And effectively, a pre-made is where a cover designer in their free time just knocks out a couple of random covers. They put a generic title on it and often put their name in as the author name. Then they put it out for sale. And if you like it and it fits your book, you buy the cover from them. It's ready-made. The design work is already done. And all they do is they change the title and the author name. So that's the cheap option of going in. And often what you'll do is if you don't have a lot of money up front, and sorry, we could actually talk about self-publishing all day. So I think we should at some stage maybe look at doing a whole webinar on self-publishing later down the line. So I'm going to try and cut this short, move on. But effectively, what's nice is that you've got the flexibility. If you go for a cheap cover and then later down the line you've earned more money and you want to rebrand it, you just do it. You don't have to get anybody's permission. You don't have to beg your publisher to spend more money on the book. You can just do it. The same thing goes, you have more control over the content. You have control over the pricing. For example, if you're with a traditional publisher and they decide to put your book out for $15, tough. And nobody wants to buy it at $15 because they don't know you from a bar of soap, tough. But as an indie author, you can put it out there for 99 cents so that your next book in the series sells, you can sell that for $3. And, you're sending more and more readers. People will take more of a chance on a 99-cent book than they will on a $3 book or a $4 book or anything. In fact, I think my cutoff is like about $6. After that, I want to know who this author is and is it a good book? Whereas I'll take a chance on any $2 book. So, better options for niche genres. Now, remember that those great big corporations are looking for bestsellers. They're trying to find, it's all a gamble, as I said earlier. They are trying to guess what's going to sell. And if they're not sure that your book is going to sell, they're not going to take a risk on it. And they're going to want to hit as big a market as possible. Now, if you have written, for example, a sci-fi alien romance, that's very niche. It only has a very limited readership. They're not going to take a risk on that. They want Jojo Moyes. They want Sophie Kinsella. And a book that's going to have book club appeal. And if you don't have that in your book because you've written your sci-fi, futuristic, alien love story, they're not going to publish you. You might get lucky and find a niche publisher, or you can self-publish. And you know what? It might be a small market, but there are readers looking for those books who will then come buy your book in droves, and you can make a lot of money out of it. So more chance of getting past, especially if the gatekeepers are holding you back. Now, this has always been a big problem for authors of color and people who aren't in the US, is that publishing has always been very traditionally white. Now, your book could go out to one white editor after another, and they just say, this book doesn't resonate with me. Why? Because it's about people from Asia, and this New York-based editor just can't wrap their head around what's happening in Asia. Is this a good fit for our American audience? Whereas if you self-published that book, and this is why self-publishing became so popular, is that all those people who were being held back by the gatekeepers, whether it was based on color or genre or just the type of content, and people weren't willing to take a risk on your J.K. Rowling famously received dozens and dozens of rejections. Why? Because she'd written this new thing and nobody knew whether it was going to take off or not. Now, if she had self-published, can you imagine? She would be even richer today than she already is. So, good for niche genres. Also, greater promotional opportunities. You can do stuff as an independent that a publisher can't. For example, Amazon advertising is only open to people who publish through Amazon, direct through Amazon.